Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the Facebook Live. It is March 3rd, year 2021, and here we are joined by all our panel members. I know Louise is having some technical issues, so we don't see her on Zoom, but hopefully she will join us at least on audio. Then Louise is our author and spiritual teacher on the panel. And we are also joined by Kelly, who's our Qigong teacher. Good evening, Kelly. April, who is a psychic and a medium and a spiritual teacher. Welcome, April. And we also have Caesar, who is a channel and a spiritual teacher. Welcome, Caesar. And of course, our incredible Eileen is always with us, going to keep us streamlined. Thank you so much, Eileen. So last week, when we had our Facebook Q&A, people had posted questions. One of the questions that was posted was from Terry. And so we were not able to respond due to lack of time. We were not able to respond to her question. I'm going to read her question. She says, how to deal with the throes of no man's land following a rebirth and a shedding of many layers of conditioning and dealing with those old friends whom I've known forever and grown up with in form. They don't know me anymore and we struggle to relate. I guess the reply will be they will see the change in you and adapt accordingly, yet the separation is somewhat messy. Would love to hear panelists' experiences. So I'm guessing the spiritual path has made the relationship between friends a little bit stressed and strained. April, did you want to go first? I know you may have encountered this since.
Yeah, I think we all encounter it. I remember way back. I didn't have necessarily. It was a spiritual evolution, but it was a church evolution. So I went to church. This was my, that was one of the first routes because that's what we're taught. So as a young child, I had went to church with my grandmother before her death. And so early 20s, I thought that was the thing to do. And I remember I was talking to one of my friends. Now, mind you, I had friends that still to this day I'm friends with, but I was married at 15, so I wasn't in high school, but they still came over, right? So I was with a friend talking one time and told her, I'm going to church. And she's like, so are you going to be one of those like churchy people? Right. And it can be whether you're going to church or whether you're having your spiritual awakening or whether you're becoming the chakra guru or, whatever. I think people get intimidated or scared about who you're going to be or become, or are you going to preach to them? And of course, my reply was no. I didn't feel like I was going to become that person. I think with any growth in life, we encounter this, any growth. I have some friends that I can think of where they're, and I still love them dearly, but they're very materialistic. And as when you go on the spiritual journey, it's not that I don't like a nice shirt or something, but I'm certainly, it's not my goal. It's not something, so you change. And so one, I think it's normal. I think people having fear because they don't know what you're doing and they don't know what you're going to be and they don't want you preaching to them. I think that's a normal thing as well. But it says you adapt, you adapt accordingly. The thing that I remember that sticks out to me is when Eckhart talks about when he sees his dad and his dad says, hey, you still doing that airy fairy stuff? And he says, yes, I am. And he doesn't take any offense to it. He can still have that conversation, that relationship, right? Because we've let go of the judgment and we're okay where they are, and we're okay where they think we are, right? So I think that if you just remove any fears, you can still have that relationship. But I also find that just like kind of this group here, like all of us on the panel and then the guest, you will naturally find a new friend group as you evolve too. That's another thing. So keep that in mind, that you will gravitate towards the people that are, like attracts like. So that's what I would start with.
Do you feel there is a wanting that people should recognize, let's say a person becomes more spiritual, immediately there's a wanting to be recognized by others? Do you do you feel there is a
For some, there could be. I mean, I didn't really want people, that wasn't important to me. But for some, it may be like, oh, I'm the most spiritual person, you know, yeah.
exactly, that's what Eckhart
Right.
says, right? Like
Yeah.
people want to get identified with that now I'm spiritual, so you're wanting the recognition, and the other is not recognizing because they are
Yeah.
unconscious.
Well, and she's saying messy. That word there makes me, it depends on how far away on the spectrum you are. I mean, if they're really not awakened,
Right,
then yeah,
they're not going to know. They're
no,
not even going to know the change in us. That's what I wanted to explain. That if they
yeah,
are unconscious, then they're not even going to be in a state where they say you're any different. They're just going to. Then there's another part of it where in their mind they have an image of you. So no matter how much you evolve, they are still stuck with their image.
yeah, that is true too. Because she's saying they don't know me anymore. Yes,
Right?
which is
Okay,
true. Yeah.
perfect. Thank you so much, April. Caesar, did you want to speak to this? No man's land.
Sure.
Thank you.
Um, First, I would just say what other people think about you is none of your business. Um, and I would maybe pay attention now that you are on a journey that involves uh, dissolving the ego. Pay attention to what is actually occurring in you and why the need for this acceptance or this validation coming from your friends. And you mentioned it that the conditioning. Um, well, you have some conditioning as well that needs to be dissolved, and the best way to deal with that, in my opinion, is that you know to give it no attention when you're not around them. Meaning, don't worry about what they think. Again, that's not for you. That's for them. And as April said, and Poonam touched on about them being, there's two types of people, conscious and unconscious. So knowing that they are still unconscious, and I understand that when you obtain a certain level of peace through dissolving the ego and the things that we practice on a daily basis with acceptance and all this stuff, and presence, you just have to draw a line about not taking things personal per se, and recognizing what it is in you that has that need for what they think, the validation I'm speaking of here. And then when you're with them, and like I said, I started to say that it's hard not to want that for other people, especially close friends and family that we do care about. It's hard not to want that peace, and it's hard not to just send a message. But people that are not ready to hear the message are definitely not going to hear the message. But it's okay to plant a seed, because at some point it may sprout. So plant the seed, do a little watering, and then when you're with them, you don't feel the need to have to explain yourself. That's another thing that we should never do. We should never have to explain ourselves, regardless, because it's not necessary in any situation, because that to me just says that you're seeking validation or something to that effect. So, and the best advice I can give when you're with your friends is just be present and allow things to be as they are and continue on your normal conversations. I'm not saying lower your frequency, as a result, but let your actions be the teacher for your friends. No matter how much you say to them, maybe I don't know the whole detail here, but um, let your actions be your guide in a sense. So no need to preach to them about anything. I'm not sure that's the case. However, when there's like an argument, and it's the way that you respond now versus how you used to respond before you started this beautiful journey. And the actions will suggest different, different level of consciousness. And hopefully they will see that and recognize it in you. And at some point, they're probably going to scratch their head and say, I want some of that. But I would just suggest be present in the moment when you're with them. And it's going to be a series of nonstop surrendering to the moment, surrender to the moment, surrender to the moment, surrender to the isness, surrender to the isness, acceptance, 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 and carry on. Smile, you can tell them you love them, but stay present in them situations. And when you're away from them, don't let your mind project, about what happened, with at lunch with your friends today, or what might happen tomorrow. At lunch with your friends, don't pay no attention to what they think, because again, that's not our business, that's theirs. So that's the best I got.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's like, what is it? Byron Katie says there are three kinds of business: my business, your business, and God's business. And the moment we need to be in my business. If the moment we are in your business, then we are in the other person, thinking like the other person, right? And when we do that, we leave ourselves. So we are feeling that loneliness. And the moment God's business, I think, is like anything with nature, like we had the winter storm, right? We say, then the human can say, oh, I don't want to have that. Why is there bad weather? Then we are in God's business. Or why do we have that hurricane? Then we are in God's business. So, Luis, I see that you're having technical issues, but we want to listen to you on audio. So as long as you can speak on audio, we talk to you. Okay?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh my goodness, I thought you were gonna say no. I'm like, what did he do? But yeah, I was thinking
Great.
about this question myself, because I feel like that's kind of like how my life has been lately, or actually since I, made so many shifts in my life. And I think I did last week when I said that my cousin had passed away, that when we were young, we were very, very close, and we had been out of touch. And part of the reason was because of my spiritual journey. And one day, probably about a year before she passed away, she told me, because I asked her, why she was being distant. And she said, because of your beliefs. And I said, well, what did I say something? And she said, yeah, you said that we create, it's all about our minds and what we think, and that's what creates our reality. And she goes, and I have this heart condition, and I didn't create this. And I just feel like that was very rude and horrible of you. And so I just rather not talk to you, or be that close to you, or something along that lines. And like the old me would have really been offended by that, and would have felt like I had to defend myself or explain away. But I think I just have gotten to the point where I just accept what is. And even if it doesn't seem to be like the most wonderful situation, I can't change, another person or what their thoughts are. I can, say what I think and what I feel, and they're free to agree or disagree. And I'm okay with that, but apparently she wasn't. So I think that we will encounter a lot of that. And I think that it's okay because then we attract the people that are on our same path, and we can share that with other people, and those people do come, and that becomes our new family, and we grow together and we're on the journey together. So it's not like, you're totally alone in this.
Thank you, Louise.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the attachment, right? Like we used to a condition, these are going to be my friends, and we wanted year after year that the same friends be much more closer to us. But impermanence of form, it's kind of teaching us impermanence of form as well, right?
Right.
Forms come, we have a relationship with a cousin, and then that form leaves. Then another form comes, we have a relationship with them. But I mean, I had like a very deep relationship with all of you, like Louise, Gracie, April, Eileen, Lakshmi, right? The joy, Summer, on just a connection, right? So we end up having different kind of group of friends, and we have to be ready. We have to be ready for that, right? For that different kind of group of friends and different kind of relationships. Our soul, what April says, our soul contract with that particular person may be over. Whatever we were supposed to transact with that person is over, and they eventually go away. And it's what Eckhart says, right? Like letting go is of far greater power than holding on. So let go of that friend, and another will come, and another will come. So thank you, Louise, for that lesson.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Beautiful. And in this book, Nature of Personal Reality, Seth says if a person has a limiting belief about that their heart is never, that they are lonely, right? That they are unloved, and they have a heart problem. Nature, that's the book right there. They're never going to find love, right? So no matter how much ever treatment you do, their heart is never going to, because the limiting belief is in there. They're always going to have a heart problem, right?
I believe that, yes.
So that's what is actually causing them their heart problem, is their own limiting belief that there's not love in the world. And no matter how much healing you bring to them, no matter how many shamanic rituals we do, or no matter the best heart surgeon can do the heart surgery on them, they will not heal, because the disease state is caused by their own limiting belief. And that's why, for all the members, this is the one thing that I offer is, we've been talking about it for almost a year. Come May, it's almost going to be a year doing Facebook Live. Over and over and over, we dig deep into all our limiting beliefs for this very reason, is the more you lift your limiting belief, the more you dissolve the limiting belief, the more you heal, right? And the power is within you. It's not within us. The power, if you hold the belief, then you're going to manifest what you're holding. And there is no, we are co-creators of our reality. That's why it's called the nature of personal reality, right? We are co-creating our reality. Kelly is nodding. Thank you, Louise, and thank you, Caesar. Appreciate it. Kelly, you want to speak to it? Thank you.
Absolutely. This is a great topic to talk about. The transition from one reality to another is what we are talking about here. Everyone's journey will be different. One of the things that I experienced, especially when I was first beginning to consciously work on this, like 25 years ago, was that sort of no man's land of transition, where I suddenly found myself in a completely different reality where everything felt different. All of my ego attachments to all my my false emotional investment in that old reality had fallen away. And it felt like I had nothing to say to people, or it felt like I could not relate to people, because I couldn't like relate to people and their drama and their egos. And I spent almost 30 years working with my family, with my mom and my brother. So there was huge dichotomies and contrasts like right in my face all the time. And one of the things that I actually taught myself how to do was how to pretend to have conversations, because I was in the workplace and I had to continue where we'd be having these meetings, and then people would look at me and I go, oh yeah, right, this is where words are supposed to come out of my mouth, and I'm supposed to say something intelligent and contribute to the conversation as if I'm a normal human being. All right, okay. Blah, blah. That makes sense. Oh, that did. Okay, all right. Note to self, I can say this and it works. So there was an awful lot of relearning communication from a place of non-attachment. And in a lot of instances, I had messy interactions and learning experiences with friends, people who had been on the same page as me and who no longer were on the same page as me energetically, emotionally, mentally, however you want to put it. And yeah, things can get messy, but as everyone has said, the attachment to the old is what keeps us in the old. And when we are on our path, when we are on our journey of awakening to our own power, to our own strength in our hearts, in alignment with ourselves, being present and detaching and no longer identifying with ego drama, it changes an awful lot. And I experienced it so often and so many times that it's become like the normal, it became my normal of feeling all of the emotional attachments just fall away. And it's probably one of the most important things to understand about evolving spiritually, is that your old world will both disappear and no longer be there, but also stay the same, because you inside will change, but the external world and everyone you interact with may not come along for the ride. Well, I mean, it's like, I'll pick up my computer. My computer is still my computer, even though I'm a different person than I was when I woke up this morning, right? It's basically that simple, but also that complex. And the irony is that the complexity is also very simple, because it is the emotional attachments to the old falling away. You are no longer identifying with those limited beliefs. You are no longer attached to those limited beliefs. So they no longer serve you, and you can no longer relate to them either. You can understand them. You can feel that space that they used to be in. And this is one of the things that also happens to me now, is someone will bring up an explanation that is very limited. I mean, we're talking about limited beliefs here. Stay on topic. We're talking about, someone will bring up a perception that is limited, that is a judgment, that is based in fear and anxiety. And I'll look inside at myself, and it's just like, when you got like one of those magic marker whiteboards, and your brain goes, there should be writing on the wall here. There should be writing on this whiteboard, except because you've let go of that old space, there's nothing there anymore. So there's a part of me where sometimes I will look inward and I'll be like, what am I reaching for? Oh yeah, right. I'm reaching for a place where that limited belief no longer exists. So it's, like trying to grasp cobwebs. You can grab them, but they just sort of are not substantial anymore. The only expectation is to have no expectations of how the new space, the new space that you've born yourself into, that you've gifted yourself with, is going to feel like, because it will not feel like anything else you've experienced before. This is one of the main things that happens when we let go of limited beliefs. We have this brand new space, and it will feel like nothing you have felt before. It will be similar. It can have the same people in it. It can have the same house in it. It can have the same laptop in it or the same phone. But everything will feel different. And this is the nature of personal reality, of the fluidity, of the ever-changing nature of reality. Where when we begin to understand how to let go, and again, this is why going inside is so important, and being present with ourselves is so important, is because the more you do that, the more it gives you a solid baseline for understanding what it feels like to be at peace and to be aligned with yourself, so that when you do change and when you do let go of a limited belief, you feel it. You feel it physically. It's not just a mental awareness. You feel it physically. You understand that something has changed. I mean, there have been times where I've let go of so much, I've almost had to relearn how to walk, believe it or not, where I am stumbling into things because my whole nervous system is, and here's the Qigong and the martial arts dude here going, bumping into walls, stubbing my toes on furniture, and literally tripping and falling upstairs because my reality's changed so much. I've had that happen more times than I can count on my fingers and toes. So the messiness is both, external and internal. And, you can always hope that people will change with you. I have worked very hard with my family with communication, because I'm very different than, my mom and dad. So, when this first started happening, my dad was, not around, and he was on the road and working a lot still, and then he had his car accident almost 3 years ago. So he hadn't been around for 20 years. So he had no idea the kind of person I was. So when he first came out of his coma, and we first started interacting, I first started helping him, he was still interacting with me as if I was a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old. Not in a bad way. It was just some of the not understanding how I had grown into a man all of a sudden kind of thing, right? Because he hadn't been around. He hadn't sort of realized what it was actually like to interact with me as an adult, other than briefly, at dinners on weekends when he'd be home. So there was some messiness that I had to sort of work out with my dad, and, just hold space for him to let him figure out and feel how to let go of that space. And when he realized that I wasn't angry with him, or that I wasn't, it's like, I get it. I feel that in terms of dealing with other people in your life, when you go through a rebirth, as, and Caesar said it beautifully, holding space, holding love for other people is probably the single most important thing that I have used in my own transitions and my own rebirths. And, sometimes people get it, sometimes people don't. And the people that do, and that want to understand and want to continue interacting, those are the people that you want in your life. I could keep going. This is like a great topic, so I'll just leave it there, but wonderful topic.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I heard a couple of things from you. One was that you just keep a normal conversation. And that's something that Eckhart also says, right? He says he does not, when he goes to parties or big gatherings, he has not very much to say, but he can do a normal conversation, like, how are you? And he likes doing that. Like if the DoorDash, I think during the Be the Light course, he said, if the DoorDash guy comes to bring him food, then he actually has a 4 or 5 minute conversation, like a few minutes of conversation with that person, right? So it's about the presence, like acknowledging the other person's presence. So that's what we can do for our friends. Like you said about your mom and your brother, right? You can just be there, and just give them presence. And that's all that was needed. It doesn't have to be messy. It doesn't, I mean, the second part that you talked about was holding the space. The moment you hold space from presence, you allow the other to be. So it's never going to be messy, right? It's
Right.
just going to be that they see the empathy and compassion. And we've met Carrie on the group meditation, and she's really sweet and precious. Like you can see the amount of presence she expresses through her eyes, and she has a lot of like when she responds on even on our Facebook posts, right? Like last week, somebody had called in with two of their family members had passed away. Remember, we were responding to them. You should have seen Terry, the amount of compassion she showed to this person about experiencing the grief, right? Lakshmi and Terry were actually helping Faiza online. Like while we were talking here, they were actually helping. So I know Terry very well. She's been doing the Sunday meditations with us, so she has a lot of presence. So she'd come through this. Like once the understanding comes through, uh, she'd be fine. So thank you, Kelly. But beautiful. Allow space, and you try and have a normal conversation. Like we can always engage in how are you and your needs and wants, day-to-day needs and wants, groceries and what have you, right?
In just to add, in some of my deepest moments of transition, of deepest letting go of limited beliefs and stuff like that, I literally just went back to my memories. Okay, what have I said before? What have I said before that works in conversation, normal conversation? So it's literally like that basic.
Yes. And eventually people will catch up. I know when I started work in 2012, that's when, like, I think I came across Eckhart in year 2010. So it must have been a year or two of Eckhart's teachings, right? So people at work would say, like one person finally, I think it was year 2014 or 15, he said that he thought that I was a phony, that I couldn't, there was no way that I could be this compassionate and kind, right? Because that's what they expect. They expect like the aggression, they expect the anger, right? And here's kindness pouring through and through and through. But I actually use and I write that in my book as well. I use the kindness at work. You know, where Eckhart says, whatever you're withholding from the world is withholding from you. So I would, if I thought that, okay, if my belief was people were not recognizing me before, I wanted to recognize people. So at work, I would gush out, like out of presence, right? Gush out a lot of appreciation. Like I would say, you've done an incredible job. Thank you so much for your dedication. Thank you so much for your flawless execution. And they were not used to it. They were not used to that appreciation, right? And so one person said, "Oh, I kind of like." He had a very honest conversation with me before he was leaving. He resigned from the workplace, and he said, "I mistook you for all these years. I mistook who you were." So Thank you. They'll finally catch up. They'll finally catch up. And we don't have to do anything for them to finally catch up that, hey, this is a different person and it's okay for the way they are. It's okay for Caesar to be so exuberant in his joyful gratitude, the way he writes, right? Louise, the same way. So it's okay. That's how some people can be that grateful. So Eileen, you wanted to say something to Terry's question? Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Sure. The first thing that came up for me was non-attachment. Sorry, I still have an 11-year-old here who's bouncing off the walls. By the way, Kelly, he said he wants to know if you're his friend. You were talking about friends, and he's like, can you ask him if he's my friend? Oh, 11-year-old boys.
Heck yeah.
See? But the first thing that came up for me was like non-attachment. So it's like you got to not have that attachment to what was. And then, you know, that suffering becomes less. The messiness is less because you're no longer like feel like you're attached to whatever it is, that relationship. And then another thing that came up for me from personal experience is that it is a little messy in the beginning, especially when the relationship is one that you have contact with every day, like in my case. So like it was really messy for like a year almost. And then it was like, is this how it's always going to be? And I just stay present, like you said, you know, stay present. And I just thought of it kind of as like being a role model, you know, just like for my kids, but like being a role model for presence and non-reactivity. And then eventually, over the last couple months, it's not as messy, you know. I mean, it's not very clean, but it's definitely not as messy. And there's little bits of hope here and there where you feel like the other one is having some of that presence, and not as much reactivity. So that's something else that came up for me. 11-year-old boys. There was one other thing, but now I can't remember what it was. It might come back to me. That's it for now.
Thank you so much, Eileen. I think in The Power of Now, Eckhart talks about the one log that is burning. When you put it against another log, even the second log may burn much more brighter, right? So Eileen is doing that with her relationship. So that's what you could do, is think of yourself as a log. Go ahead, Eileen.
I remembered the other thing.
Go ahead.
Somebody was mentioning like when you get into conversations with people, you know, from your past self, and sometimes it's like awkward, you know, because like Kelly says, like they'll be talking about things and you're like, this doesn't matter, like this doesn't matter in the scheme of things, you know. And it's like, wait, like I don't want to talk about that, like and you don't want to be rude and be like, I don't care, but you're like, why are we having this conversation? And in person, I've found that I'm able to use most of the space by just giving them space, you know, listening, but not much response. Maybe just some basic, you know, conversation. But the other thing was, I find now when it's in writing, so like if somebody emails me or texts me or messages me, and I'm getting that kind of feeling of I don't want to go there, like I just don't, respond, or I'll put it off, you know, and I'll be like, this can be dealt with at a later date or a later time. And then when I have that space in my mind, and then I'll just, reply with something simple, sorry to hear that, has happened or whatever. But yeah, I don't respond to a lot anymore.
Awesome. Thank you. You don't get pulled into their drama anymore.
No, nope.
So that's another great pointer, right, from Eileen, that don't get pulled into their drama, and it won't be messy if you don't get pulled into their drama, because they'll try to pull us, right? They want to get the same. We've conditioned them all these years to a certain type of person, and they are expecting that certain type of person, right? And the moment that they don't get that certain type of person, that maybe let's say they think Jane Doe is like cranky and angry, has angry remarks, and we are no longer cranky and have angry remarks, right? Then they're going to want to push our buttons to get that reaction, right? So that's the conditioning that's dropped. So rejoice in your ability to not be reactive. We did the Stephen Covey, between stimulus and response, there's a gap, and you found the gap, right? Mind the gap, as Eckhart says. Mind the gap.
Funny, because I've been teaching that for probably 10 or 12 years. And it wasn't until the last 2 years that I'm like, oh, now I really get what that meant. Like, I thought I knew what it meant in thinking mind, but not knowing what it meant in, being. But now when I teach it, it has a totally different meaning. But yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a question. I know John joined. Did he have a question? And he left.
He didn't send one to me in the chat or on Facebook. I was looking, but I didn't see anything.
Okay, thank you. So Nancy asked a question. You want to read it, Eileen? Thank you.
Yep. I got to go up a little bit. So question for whenever. I think I'm going through a move, but so conflicted between heart and mind, so paralyzed. What's wrong with me? Is this ego, attachment? Sounds like she's already nailed part of it.
Caesar, you want to talk about it? Thank you.
Sure. Well, yeah, absolutely. Your words, not ours. The ego at play here. Whenever there's a conflict between the thought, these are Eckhart's words, not mine. Whenever there's a conflict between the thought and the emotion, the thought is going to be the one lying 90% of the time, if not 100. So follow what feels good. When she says move, I'm guessing this is a geographical move. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, change is the hardest thing for a human to encounter and accept at the same time. So approach it fearlessly. I mean, it's that the one thing that everybody fears is change, because the ego likes the things the way they are, completely the way they are. And if it's miserable, the ego's completely fine with that as well, as we know. Again, Eckart's words, not mine. But yeah, you got to really learn to flow with the changes in life, and don't be afraid, because it's the one thing that holds you back from doing everything you need to do in life. And you'll find that when you just go with the flow and don't have the resistant thoughts about the change you're seeking to make, or that's maybe the change is coming to you and this is something that it's not even your choice. That could be the situation as well, and you just have to move. Either way, you have to embrace this and know that once you make the move, then you can ask yourself, was this really what I was supposed to do? And I promise you, you can answer yes, whether you make the move or not. At the end of the day, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. That's how we know we're always on the right path. And I like to say that if your life was a book, you would be at the exact sentence of the exact chapter or paragraph of the exact page that you are supposed to be at this exact moment in your life. Always is the case. So embrace change, feel good about it, lose the fear, be present. That's how you lose the fear. And yeah, and if you're wondering why, it's all going to come down to ego, I believe. Yes. But the fear is what you have to learn to dissolve in your life, and the only way you can really do that is to be present. Be present. Absolutely be present, and there will be no more fear. So learn to trust the journey and enjoy it along the way. You know, if you wind up at the destination and you have gotten drugged through the entire journey, the destination is really going to seem bleak when you get there. So it's very, very, very to enjoy the journey along the way. And, you know, focusing on each moment as you encounter them. Extremely important. You know, it's like you're climbing a mountain to get to the summit. If you're not actually in them moments, what good is it when you get to the top? Well, I'm sure the view is going to be nice. But again, this is a lifelong journey. It's not a race. It's not, you know, a competition. Enjoy it. We didn't come here to get, you know, drug around and live in fear and, you know, have all this worry and anxiety. Yeah, that more the, you know, middle parts of our lives in the 20s and or maybe say 30s. And now as we get older, we need to start enjoying life and looking at these things. And it's all on the inside, you know. All the answers you seek are on the inside. And if you follow that, and Kelly's the Qigong teacher in Hotalia, as well as April and everybody else, that, you know, it's all on the inside. Everything you seek, all the answers that you seek are on the inside. So be present, go with the flow. And as long as you can maintain your presence power, there will be no fear or no doubt about what you're doing. So like I said, just embrace it. It's better known as the grid filling in for you. And that will lead you to the next thing that's supposed to occur in your life and the next and the next and the next. So embrace it. Know that it's supposed to happen. Once it does happen, don't question it. There's no need to do that because that will prevent you from getting led to the next moment and the next moment and the next great thing that's supposed to occur in your life. Life is not going to lead you down a path of misery. I promise you. Always work with the source energy, and then you will be fine.
Thank you so much, Caesar. I like the enjoy the journey. It's about enjoying every moment. And this is what Nancy messaged me on Messenger as well. And I said, if you're dissatisfied now, just because you uproot yourself and move somewhere else doesn't mean that you won't be dissatisfied there, right? The dissatisfaction is an internal thing. So first find satisfaction in this moment. Until you can love where you are in this moment, you will not love even when you move to the other place. I think Byron Katie says, right? She went out for a walk into the desert in Barstow, and she took the whole world with her in her head, right? Because this is where everything is going on. All the, oh, she did this and he could and I could and she should have. All that is within these two in this head. So whether you are here or you move somewhere else, it's right here.
Yeah, you just said it. I like to say this all the time. Enjoy where you are now, or you will never get where you're going. You can't really get from sad to happy. So absolutely.
Thank you. There's too wide a vibrational jump, right? That's why Abraham Hicks actually says you need to go from anger to frustration from frustration to annoyance. You can't go from anger to love, right? Because it's too big a jump. So vibrationally, that's what it is, Nancy. So be joyful right now. Thank you, Caesar, for that insight. April, did you want to? I'm sure you're gonna have a zinger, some
You
kind
think
of
so?
insight. Yes, you always come up with
You
something.
think so, huh?
Yes. Because you go look in somewhere in the back of, like, deep within, what did they really think and why did they pose that question. So I always feel you go deeper. So go
Yeah.
ahead. Thank you.
So I agree with Caesar completely. That is, all of that applies. And then what I was going to add was between the heart and the mind. So the heart energetically, I don't know if most of the listeners know or not, but the heart, it's been said 40, and then actually I've seen up to 60 times stronger. The energetic field of the heart is at least 60 times stronger than the brain. So that means that your heart feels first, senses first, knows first. So when you walk into a room and you meet somebody and you instantly like them, we'll switch it up, you instantly like them, it's your heart that likes them, not your head. You don't know them. You've a word didn't even come out of their mouth. So that would be one of my first things, is to listen to your heart without the chatter of the mind. The mind is conditioned. The mind is saying, where's our scientific proof? Are we doing this right? Is this the right location? Is this the right numbers? Is this the right people? What's the exact address? Let me do the numerology on that. What corner of the street is it on? Right? It's looking for all the data, but the heart is a feeling, sensing. It's always more correct. It's always right. So there are times where the heart is not right. And this is where I think that she doesn't trust herself to be able to make the right decision, or that things will turn out okay. I'm paralyzed because I have this deep fear that I won't make the right decision, that I'm not doing the right thing, that the universe does not support me. That's where I think that more of this problem, more of the paralyzing is coming from, is not trusting in the process, trusting in the flow. So now, should you get out a piece of paper and do a pro and con? Sure, you can do that. But if you don't trust in the process, you don't trust in yourself, you don't trust in your ability to take care of yourself, and you don't trust in the universe to have your back, it won't matter. When you get to the new destination, you will not be happy. Or when you stay in your current destination, you will not be happy. So what I would do is I might take out and make a pros and cons checklist, but I would probably go into presence, go into meditation. I would probably step back, shut the mind up, and listen to my heart is what I would do. Because the heart is always stronger. It always knows more. It's always connected to source more. Always.
Thank you so much, April. And so is the fear not showing her non-alignment with her heart space, as Kelly calls it? Like, the alignment with inner beingness is not there. And so I'm now, the thinking mind has taken over, and our past condition mind will be fearful, anxious, angry, all the resentments and hatred, all that is up in our mind, right? And the emotions that it causes, like, Caesar said, the thoughts creating emotions.
She's afraid too of making the wrong choice, and she's afraid that the universe is not going to have her back, that things aren't going to be. Yeah.
And all that requires is just alignment, just being still, right? The more still we are, the answers come. And that's what we are saying. We've been saying this for a few weeks, that be still, have a breathwork practice, commune with nature, meditation, any type of tool. Each one of us needs a tool, right? The whole panel has gone through in one of the Facebook Lives, what are the tools that we use to become still? And each one had their own practice. Like Kelly has his Qigong practice to become still. I don't do Qigong. I actually do sound meditation to be still, but all of us need that connection back to source, right? And that is what actually, then any moment is joyful. It doesn't have to be like the most pleasant spa type of atmosphere, right? Where people are bathing us and there's like rose petals and all that. Wherever you are, you're going to be joyful. And like Eckhart says, right, he would get into his Russian cheap car and drive in London and just sit in the rain and watch the rain, like the raindrops drop, right, for hours. So you'd be joyful just watching the rain fall. So that's how you don't have to have anything. You can have the cheapest car on the face of this earth, the Russian made. He called it, what is it, Prada, Lada or something? Lada. So his Russian made car. So no matter where you are, you're joyful. So thank you, April, for that. Louise, did you want to say something about this question that Nancy has?
What was coming to me was a lot about the mind and our thoughts. And so I would just say that, think about the stories that your mind is telling you, or the thoughts that you have around this, and switch it. See how you would feel it without the stories, without the thoughts. And when I've done that, it's pretty amazing, because everything kind of falls off and you're like, oh, there's not really a problem, or you see the solution when you are able to like view whatever it is without the stories that you are projecting onto that. And so a lot of it, and a lot of things in my life, is what I tend to do is when I start to see those stories appearing that my mind is making up, the fearful ones or the self-doubt or whatever it may be, is to just look at that situation then without those thoughts, without the self-doubt, and it clears the way. It's a really good pointer.
Thank you, Louise. So the self-talk in their head could be saying, this is not good, this place is not good, this place is not good, this place is not good. The moment you drop the self-talk, even this place is good, and I can move to the other place, and the other place will be good too. If not, the self-talk would say, oh, why did I leave? Let's say location A and location B. Why did I leave location A? I should have stayed in location A, right? That's what the self-talk could do. So beautiful. Thank you, Louise. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Beautiful. Kelly, did you want to talk about what Nancy is posing as a question? Thank you.
First off, I'd like to say that I really agree with everything that's been said. April, I really liked what you had to say about writing a list, pros and cons. Sometimes when you actually get it out in front and out of our heads, literally, and see it, we can actually feel it a lot more clearly. Excellent idea. One that I also would recommend Nancy take the time to go through. And, yeah, Caesar, what you said about, being present and letting yourself feel, there was a period in my life where I moved 6 times in the space of 3 years because I was trying to keep a relationship alive that, well, I ended up, stepping out of that old space and not trying to keep that old space alive in my life anymore. And one of the things that moment in time, that experience, that educational experience gave me was understanding how to accept that it did not matter where I lived. That so long as I had my discipline, my practice, so long as I was taking care of myself emotionally, and granted, I will fully own that following all of those moves in such a short amount of time, incredibly stressful. I'm someone who likes to put down roots and build and not move around. So the learning experience for me was understanding how to let go of the external world as my home and how to look inside for real and accept that my one true home was my heart space, was my alignment with myself, being present and being aligned with my heart. Now, obviously, I'm not Nancy, and I do not know of the specific details that Nancy is working through in terms of this move. And, pros and cons are always important to look at. I agree with what was said about, Louise, what you said about the self-talk. Really important to pay attention to that. This is why I thoroughly recommend actually writing everything down so that you can actually see it instead of just having it bounce around in the head, and to look at the pros and cons of both locations. And sometimes, for me, moves have to be super practical. They have to be, have that element of, really much more practicality than my present situation to get me to want to move now. And I mean, I've been in this house that I'm in now for about 15 years. And, the idea of being anywhere else at the moment is, an odd one to me, one that I do not feel in my heart. And yeah, everything that's been said about going inside and listening and being present with your heart, being present with your feelings, and watch the self-doubt, watch those feelings. If you feel that there's a lot of self-doubt happening, yeah, write stuff out so there can be no second guessing as to the pros and cons. And if this is a practical issue, if it's about money, then make it about the money. If it's about a person or wanting to keep an attachment with a person alive, which those 6 moves for me were all about, then, look into that a little bit. Maybe give yourself a little bit more space to digest that reality and whether or not it really supports you, not just practically, but emotionally and spiritually and mental space wise. I mean, in this day and age right now, things are a little hairy. Just take the time to let yourself feel it out. And if you find that there's too much chatter, go for a walk, do something to get yourself out of your head. But best of luck with whatever decision you make.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Beautiful. Yet there seems to be like a contradiction, like she's here, but wanting to be there, right? But she still feels that the here is where she needs to be for now. So that's the conflict. So just out of what April says, right? out of your heart space, make a decision, ask your heart if it's going to be there, then just go do it, and then that's going to be your right action. Once you move to location B, that is what is and nothing else, right? Eileen, did you want to say something to Nancy about her moves? And I know we have a third question, so we'd go through the third question.
She had made an additional comment on the post.
Okay.
And right after Kelly had mentioned something about like figuring out what the move is for, she made a comment that said no happiness, and I wasn't sure if she's saying that the move is for that purpose, so I was trying to wait for her to respond to that. The other thing is, Lakshmi made a comment that I wanted to read on the
Go ahead.
live.
Thank you. Love it.
I know you post this in multiple places, so not everyone will see the chat.
Okay.
I just got to figure out where it was. Probably almost there. Sorry. Every time somebody makes a new comment, it goes bouncing back up. So Lakshmi said, unknown is vast. What we know, what these eyes can see is very, very, very little. Nancy, she's talking to. Trust in that unknown. Everything is going to be okay. Sending you loads of love and light. So when I read that, I was like, that, yeah, like we don't know very much. We think we do. We really don't. But I think for me, like acceptance came up again. You know, if you are in fact moving, then it's best to accept your present moment, no matter what that present moment is. And I was talking to Ryan and a few others on Monday about this. Like, you need to make sure that you're being accepting and grateful for everything, all that is, because otherwise it's just resistance and more suffering. So.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lakshmi, for your insight and wisdom. Always, it's mind-boggling what arises right in this energy field. And thank you, Aline, for the acceptance and gratitude, right? So until we can be grateful, and this was what was another pointer that I had given, is you have to be grateful for where you are right now, right? Until we can have and it was like last week or the week before, Nancy said something about stepping outside and not liking nature wherever she is in location A, right? And my thing was, you have to feel gratitude for, you look at the sky and feel the gratitude for the sky. You look at the leaf and you feel the gratitude. I'm sure nature anywhere, no matter, and I've traveled I've gone to Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've gone to Modesto, California. I've gone to Gainesville, Florida. So I've traveled a lot within the US. So if you're on this continent of North America, whether it's Canada or anywhere in the US, it is endowed with nature. No matter here, the whole planet is endowed with nature, right? And what Eckhart says, our body is nature. So like Caesar said, right, you can always go within. If you cannot see it, appreciation outside, you can always see it within. Go deep inside. You were going to say something, Caesar?
Yeah, the mind hack, here too is you don't really have to be specific if you can't be, as far as finding gratitude for where you're at. Be general. Find anything to feel grateful for in the moment. It doesn't have to be necessarily focused on where you're at or the situation that you're in presently. You can find anything now, generally speaking, to be grateful for. It could very well just be the air that you're breathing. So in a time like that, when you're having a hard time finding something to be grateful for, get real general, broaden the whole idea, and just start creating this feeling of gratitude and milk it for as much, as long as you can, and let it create some momentum, and that will slowly shift your frequency to get up here, and then things will start happening in that nature, more, like attract likes. And as far as, I just want to touch on this real quick. I had friends call me, I think I mentioned this before, about, I just want to go to California and lay on the beach and watch the sunrise with my toes in the sand and listen to the water. And I'm in Detroit, Michigan, looking at burned down houses and weeds this tall and, holes in the fence. And I was just like literally out there for an hour, just gazing off, seeing the pure beauty. And I don't know what, but you really, see what you want to see at the end of the day. I'm doing the Course of Miracles right now. And it's ironic that that's exactly where we're at, about seeing, kind of what you choose to, but look for the beauty in everything and everybody, every situation, every physical object, every person. Look for the beauty. It is there, and it has to become a practice. This is the way of reconditioning our minds to be able to see the beauty, because it's not a very good feeling when you can look at somebody with stereotyping people, let's just say. That only hurts us, and it affects us in a negative way. And then we get this low vibe and frequency going, and it stays with us. And I lived like that for a few years of my life in the past. And it's, recalling now, it's like, yeah, I really honestly don't even remember them times. However, it does create a very low vibe and frequency. So again, just get general with the gratitude. Find something, anything to feel grateful for. Milk that, and then start to create that momentum. And the other things will start flowing. You have this feeling of gratitude. The universe is going to offer more stuff to feel grateful for. And then you can start flowing. But that's all I want to say. Get general with the gratitude if you can't find something. But there's always something to feel grateful
Thank you so much, Caesar. Beautiful.
And she did reply to my question on, is it the happiness she's trying to move towards? She did say yes.
Okay.
So that goes back to what Poonam was saying. You have to be able to be happy here.
Yes.
Except here now.
Because our mind is making this present moment unhappy. A mind, and that is the resistance that Ryan is talking about. The moment the thinking mind creates resistance, then we've created a challenge. The polarity is created. And the moment the polarity is created, something will go wrong. Right? Something can go right, but then something can go wrong. Both, and like Lakshmi says, right, that is the dwelling in the unknowable. Something could go right, something could go wrong, and I'm okay no matter whether it goes right or no matter whether it goes wrong. The moment you are okay with whether it goes right or wrong, and the mind doesn't come say the wrong should not happen, you're allowing, you're in the state of grace. You're in the state of allowing. That's the only, and Eckhart in A New Earth gives the Zen masters, is that so, or J. Krishnamurti's, I don't mind what happens, right? The moment you're in that state of, I don't mind what happens, even if I go to location B and there's issues with location B, I don't mind what happens, what Lakshmi said, right? That's why I titled my book, The Journey into the Unknowable, right? Journey towards the unknowable, the infinite and eternal. The more we can stay in the state of the unknowingness of it all, in our formlessness, the more we are truly living our essence. So let's see, there was another third question. Thank you, Eileen and Caesar. Melanie says, you want to read Melanie's questions, Eileen?
Sure.
I'll get a break. Thank you.
Can you speak to the ideal that we are a collective and therefore have to suffer as a collective, while also being told that we will be divided into separate realities, and to leave the collective seems contradictory?
Kelly, did you want to get started on that? Thank you.
Sure. This is a few things all at once. There is no contradiction, but let me sort of dig into this a little bit. We are a collective. Everyone on this planet has to collectively work towards supporting a new space, a golden age of light where we can all heal and move out of the old space of fear that we've been living in for such a long time. In that sense, that is the collective narrative and the collective storyline of the entire planet. It does not matter where you are or who you are, that is the collective narrative. Now, I mean, quite honestly, we already are divided into different realities. Those of us who are choosing love and those of us who are choosing fear. It's that simple. I'm trying to remember whether it was Buddhism or which shamanistic tradition it was, where, I mean, humans, we are meant to walk in multiple dimensions at once. The concept that we are limited to this linear 3D reality is one that has been manufactured in such a way as to provide a illusion of consent, or to trick us into consenting to believing into our limited beliefs. Did that make sense? I think that made sense. This is a really deep rabbit hole. So I'm going to try and refrain myself here. And again, suffering is a choice, right? Suffering is a concept of reality. Suffering is a reality. So it is not an ideal that we are supposed to suffer. We are not supposed to suffer. This is where I was coming from when I said the consent, the illusion of consent. The illusion is the manufactured belief that we have to be suffering. When you choose to go inside and be present and be emotionally responsible and aligned with your heart, you understand that suffering is an illusion and is a choice, and is what your monkey mind is programmed to do until you press the stop button. And you can press the rewind button and play it again to watch it again, and press the stop button, and then just take the batteries out or chuck the monkey with the symbols out with the batteries. So the whole idea that we are supposed to suffer, again, is the illusion. This is one of the main tenets of Buddhism. All reality is suffering. That is the illusion. All reality is not suffering. We suffer because we are attached to the illusion. We are attached to the concept that we have to suffer and there's nothing we can do about that, which is completely false. Completely, utterly false. Now, as a collective, we all have to go through growing pains with the collective. This is what it means to be a collective. Some of us will have an easier time working through the growing pains, being in a first world country that is going through a pandemic at this time. So speaking of illusions, we can choose to be attached to what we are being told outwardly from the external world, or we can choose to go inside and align ourselves and be emotionally responsible and present and align with our hearts and understand what our hearts are telling us about the deeper nature of reality and how much vaster it is, and how suffering and this little illusion is just this little itty bitty squish of a sliver of reality. Yeah. Anyone know Kids in the Hall here? Kids in the Hall? Kids in the Hall? No? Look it up? Okay. It's a Canadian thing. Anytime I do this, I go, it's a Canadian thing. Look it up. It's Canadian comedy at its finest. Throw some levity onto this heavy, deep rabbit hole. Illusions. So, now it's really interesting to get onto the topic of separate realities, or the concept of being divided. Being divided, again, is a limited belief. Being divided and separated from source is what we are already dealing with. This is why being present is so important, because when you are present, you can step back into observation and realize how you have fostered and supported the consent of being pulled into separation and staying in separation. Now, another great book to read is The Celestine Prophecy, if you've ever heard of it or read it. The Celestine Prophecy, really, really good book, because it kind of touches on this concept of being in multiple realities at once, or the evolution of humankind shifting into the space where we exist in one reality and other people exist in another. And we've actually already talked about this, about the initial conversation that we had, how to deal with the process of no man's land. Right at the beginning of this evening, when we're talking about the transition from one old reality into a new reality after a rebirth. When we align with our heart and we are aligned with spirit and creation and the eternal cosmic ocean of the divine, we will still be here. We will still be in 3D reality, tap, 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 and we will be existing with that connection, with that energy, with that love in our hearts, with that awareness, while we are dealing with all the limitations everywhere around us in the external world, and people who cannot relate and who cannot function being aligned with their hearts and who are stuck in their drama and their programming. That is the world of illusion. Being aware of that world of illusion while we are aligned with our hearts and working at being present and being disciplined and evolving spiritually and being on this journey means that you all are already existing in two realities at the same time. So it's already happening. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing bad about this. Being in alignment with the eternal while we are existing on this planet is the whole point. Because this is the whole point of being human. It does not matter what job you do or where you live. Being on this planet means that you are evolved. Some of us will be just along for the ride. Some of us will be more conscious than others. But all of us are here to learn how to walk in two realities at the same time. Some of us, again, will be conscious of it and will be actively refining the whole process. And others will just naturally gravitate energetically and grow into it without being conscious of it at all. And yeah, I can just keep going. There's just so much here. So I will just stop myself.
Thank you, Ken.
And yeah, those are my 3 cents. 2 cents with a little extra.
So I'm not familiar with what philosophy that comes from, that we are a collective suffering. So April, did you want, exactly. So I don't know where she got the concept from. So it kind of confused.
I
Go
think
ahead, April.
Eckhart speaks of the Eckhart speaks of the collective. You know, when he talks about thought forms and how you can go into riding on the bus, or you can walk into a room where people have been arguing and you can pick up that energy. That's the collective energy. So I think that's partly where she's getting this from. I really think, though, ultimately, one of the bottom lines of her question here is, what are we doing here? And what's the point? What is the point? Why am I doing this? Why am I coming here? I'm suffering, I'm separating, then I'm going back, and then I'm separating. And the idea here is I think that she thinks that when we get back to the other side, that we don't merge into one, because if you listen to NDEs, they say, well, I seen my grandpa, or I seen my angel, or I seen my, so she's thinking, wait a minute, I don't get to go back to source. I'm back to being separate again. What the heck's the point of all of this? And honestly, I just had this conversation with myself last night is, for the love of God, why would you leave in the first place? Why would I leave source in the first place? And honestly, well, I get it. And I know that we are here and there is a collective energy, and we are collectively going through suffering right now, but actually it's not necessarily suffering. It is suffering, but it's not suffering.
It's a spiritual lesson.
Remolding. It is a spiritual lesson. Yeah. So, and as you know, I don't really know that we can say it much better. As Kelly was saying, is suffering also it is a choice. Now through this whole pandemic, it's not that there's been a couple of days where I just cried. I just felt so much sadness from the collective. I just cried. And it was sad. It was unbelievably sad. But I always kept in my mind that no one dies before their time. I don't care how you die. You don't die before your time. Seriously, doesn't happen. It doesn't mean I don't feel bad for the losses. So I keep that in mind. I also keep in mind that you've got a contract that for whatever reason your crazy soul signed up for. And that meant you signed up that on August 21st at 7:05 p.m., you were checking out, right? So there is a collective, and it does appear that we are suffering. And I think there is some suffering, but again, until we continue to evolve, and this is the problem is, I don't know, maybe I'm going off on a tangent, but humans, we're just not there yet. There's so much abuse and suffering and non-awakeness that we don't get to not suffer yet until we evolve, until we get to the point where everything is unconditional love. When we can love everything, everyone, all with unconditional love, we get to stop doing this. We get to stop suffering, right? That's the key. So I'm also running on a tangent because so I'm going to say that when we can learn to love everything, everyone, every bug, every speck, all of it, then we get to stop doing this, and that collective suffering will stop. We will go back to Atlantis stage or whatever, the golden, age. We'll get to go back there, Christ consciousness. And then I think that separation, we won't feel that so much.
So maybe Melanie is not aware that every human or all of creation is just coming from that same non-physical entity, right? I'll use the terms that Abraham Hicks uses. Eckhart says we are part of that one consciousness, right? We are the one. You are the universe. You are the universe. The separation, your body. If you say April is that body, right? That's not true. We are the one consciousness, right? So that's where the collective part comes. We are all non-physical energy in our essence. We are that quantum level. We are non-physical energy, right?
Yes, we are
So
all part of source. We all come from one source. Now, even if you look at the Bible doesn't say there's two sources. We don't come from two sources. Now, the Bible says there's a devil and there's a God, but it does not say there's two sources. There's one source, there's God. Then there's the devil down here. We all come from one source. That's it, one.
So Eckhart uses the term one consciousness. Abraham Hicks uses the term non-physical energy, right? So when we were a non-physical energy, or we were part of that one consciousness, this soul, what becomes our soul, right? Or whatever is our the personality essence, whatever is this form, shows we are being presented lessons even in that world, in the other realm, right? As non-physical energy, we have guides, and the guides are teaching us lessons. Because the evolutionary impulse, if you learn the evolutionary impulse of what Eckhart actually means by evolutionary impulse, is exactly what Abraham Hicks says, the fundamental, and all scientists say, right? What is fundamental to the Big Bang Theory? Fundamental to the Big Bang Theory is inflation, expansion. We are all expanding, right? Uh, so the expansion comes from the lesson. The moment we know our lesson, there's an expansion. We have become, we matched up to our inner being. The moment we learn the moment Nancy learns the lesson of gratitude, her being in location A and being unhappy, she's expanded. She's matched up into what her what is Nancy's inner being saying while she's in location A. Even in location A, her inner being is saying, I love this place. Because what does our inner being say, right? And I'm an immigrant, so I've moved from one city to another city, to moving to Louisiana, to now being in Texas, right? I went to school in Louisiana. So just like Eckhart, I have no sense of belonging to one single place, right? Any place, wherever I am, is home. Wherever I go, it's home, right? Because I'm not East Indian, and I've lived here like about 28, 30 years. So nor am I East Indian, nor am I American. I'm like in this limbo state of whoever I am, formless, right?
There's
No,
a book, when my mom passed, there's a book that I read. It was called The Life of Billy Fingers. And it was a guy that had passed, and he came through to his sister, and his sister wrote the book. And he explains going to the other side and what you do. And then he says in there, he says, well, I'm going to have to stop talking to you so much because I have things I have to learn here, right? I ended up giving that book to my stepdad to read, who is, there's nothing that you live, you die, bam, gone. So it was quite interesting to watch him say afterwards things like, well, I think your mom was here around me today, you know. So, but the Afterlife of Billy Fingers, I believe it's called.
Afterlife of Billy Fingers. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we would have learned lessons there, but our souls chose to be born to these certain parents. We chose our parents. We were born to these parents, right? And the child was born, and that parent or that family structure would have led to certain kind of challenges which causes suffering, right? But the whole, if you go look back, rewind your life to the day that you were born, each one was a lesson of forgiveness. Each one was a lesson of acceptance. The last two chapters of Eckhart's, right? Chapter 9, chapter 10 of The Power of Now is going to teach you why you were here. It doesn't say, right? Why you were here was forgiveness, acceptance, to learn acceptance, to surrender, what April said, to come to an unconditional love. So that is what your suffering will end the moment you can always be aligned with inner beingness. You can always, your every action is as though the action was being performed by planetary intelligence or by source, right? You're aligned with inner beingness, and now loving kindness, compassion, gratitude is flowing through you in every action. That was your lesson, right? The moment you have that lesson and pass away, you've lived your correct life, right? You've risen above the conditioned patterns. I think the collective the collective consciousness was the conditioned patterns that exist in humanity, right? The anger, the hatred, the separation, the cutting people off. We've discussed this for the past couple of months. So if they want to, Melanie wants to go back into our Facebook Lives, she can see what we've talked about, right? Caesar, did you want to say something about the question, collective versus? Thank you, April.
Yeah, beautifully explained already. It's something that personally I don't think about anymore. I used to try to figure it all out, but I just, like narrowed it down to the simple fact that we are all connected, here and in the unmanifested. There's never a time when we're not all connected, whether we're in the world of form or not, because what happens when we relinquish the body? What changes? Nothing. We just return to the formless, the unmanifested. And in that sense, we are always connected to everything. And the separation does come by way of ego. When you think you are separate from anybody or anything, it doesn't mean you're not connected. It's just the perception of what you think. There is no separation. To all that, I believe Eckhart calls it one life as well, doesn't he? The one life, yeah, the one life. And that's what he's referring to as the collective always, now and then. So it's my half a penny. Yeah, there is no separateness. Ever.
Thank you, Caesar. Beautiful. So there are no separate realities, right? I don't know what she meant by we would create separate. That's the part I couldn't understand. What did she say? As a collective, which also being told that we will be divided into separate realities and to leave the collective. There is nothing called leaving the collective. We are the collective, and we always go back, like what Caesar is saying, right? If you cannot experience that unity consciousness, then the non-physical entity that is Louise is the non-physical entity that is Poonam, right? We are not going to, we haven't lived the depth of being rooted in our beingness. Thank you, Caesar. Louise, did you want to say something about Melanie's question?
Not really. I feel like everybody has spoken to it very well. The only thing that I would say is that the only thing that may seem like a separation is that we are individually responsible, but yet we do feel the collective because we are all one. So I just feel like everyone explained it very well.
Thank you, Louise.
Mm-hmm.
Eileen, did you have any question for, any response for Melanie's question? And I know Summer asked your question.
To add, there was quite a few things that were brought up that I was already thinking. So I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So real quick, Summer is actually asking, Poonam, does every soul experience enlightenment before it dies? Yes, they will become the non-physical entity, right? They will become the one or return to the one consciousness. When Eckhart in A New Earth says, when the deer's spirit is leaving its body, right? It's self-realizing the moment. Thank you, Kelly. Kelly says souls do not die. So when the spirit is leaving, that's the non-physical in us. And it's not even like that the soul exists in the body. That's an incorrect thing, right? The soul does not even exist within us. It's like in the quantum, it's non-local, right? It's not localized in this physical body. It's just vibrational, what the soul is, right? So let's say we say the soul, the spirit is leaving the body. The life, all we can say is the life force that we are is leaving the body. When it's leaving the body, the discriminatory mind is no longer there, right? So it is going to know, it is going to realize who it is. That's what the near-death experience is. Like Gracie and I took a course with Dr. Eben Alexander, right? People, I mean, I'm not died yet to say, okay, here's the experience, how you experience it. But what they say, Anita Mujani, Dr. Eben Alexander, all the near-death experience, people with near-death experience say what they experience is unconditional love, right? Because the spirit is become non-physical at that point. So, and we can experience it ourselves when we go inside and we are so totally still. We experience that vibrational energy, just like is loving, right? We can feel the love is within us. So yes, they all become enlightened in the sense that they know their true nature. And actually, when the spirit is leaving the body, they say you have a final life review, right? In India, they call it Kalbhairavi or some kind of process. So there's a final life review where you actually see every the way Dr. Eben Alexander and Karen Noel explained it is you actually see it from the other perspective. So if he were, let's say, my father passed away when I was 17 years old, and I held a lot of resentment about that, right? Why did he pass away? Kelly says life review before the karmic board of the Council of Light. Yeah. So I just want to be mindful of time because it's almost like Eileen's bedtime, right? She's about to. So I just wanted to say there's a life review for every spirit that leaves, because this soul, exactly what April was talking about, right? Like the soul has to now figure out, did it learn all its lessons? What is the next lesson it's going to learn? Does it need to take another rebirth to learn the lesson? It didn't learn how to be unconditional love in this lifetime. And so the most beautiful thing that this panel and everyone out there, like Lakshmi, Gracie, you, Summer, everybody is doing is moving towards this unconditional love. That's all we can do, is the more we are this unconditional love. And that's why we are breaking these limiting beliefs, right? The more Louise is unconditional. I mean, she posts pictures of her kids having the liver rescue smoothie. It's like, and then they're sitting with their hands over their hearts in mindfulness. And little 4-year-old, right? So cute. So the more we can move towards unconditional love, the more we are learning our lesson. So the more we are actually not participating in the collective consciousness, we are not getting pulled in, like April was saying, right? We get pulled in into the thoughts of the collective. And the reason why, what you can do to not be pulled in is don't watch TV, don't watch the news, don't watch a whole lot of online, whatever is propaganda that is going on. Each one is just an opinion of a human. Let it go and be your stillness. Be what Lakshmi said, be the unknowable within you. Go deep within, right? Should we stop at this? Good with that? Have a wonderful evening. It was an honor and a privilege. Oh my God, this was incredible. So Thank you so much, everyone online, for meeting us. And Travis could not make it because he's traveling. So he was here with us in spirit. We had a good session and honor, totally humbled. Many blessings, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Indeed, to you as
Thank
well.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.